I'm Kristen Mueller. I'm MRA Senior Director for the Scientific Program. And today I'm here with Alex Alencar of the Rising Tide Foundation for Clinical Cancer Research, and with TJ Sharpe, who's a stage 4 melanoma survivor and patient advocate. In recent years, more and more researchers, pharmaceutical companies, and funders like Rising Tide and MRA are recognizing the importance of engaging patients in the research life cycle. Today I'm going to discuss with Alex and TJ why this is such an important thing to do, how best to do it, and why Rising Tide Foundation have made a lot of changes in their research program to move forward with engaging patients in the research that they fund. We'll also be discussing an exciting new partnership between MRA and the Rising Tide Foundation that will be launching later this summer. In that partnership, we're going to be supporting 2 Team Science Awards that are focused on supporting first-in-human clinical trials with the potential to provide significant impact to melanoma patients. These awards, which will be $1.5 million each over the course of 5 years, are seeking to support novel clinical trials where patients are actively engaged in the research project throughout the entire life cycle of that project. So before getting into too much detail about the funding opportunity, I want to start out our conversation by asking you both, what does patient engagement mean in the context of cancer research? And Alex, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Kristen. So as you mentioned, Rising Tide Foundation is we have made a lot of changes in our funding programs, and our ambition is that patients will be engaged in development of a research project from the idea inception through to results dissemination. So for us, patient engagement really means to put the patient at the center of clinical trials. And we believe that conducting medical research and development based on patients' personal cancer journeys is the best way of doing it. And we hope that this journey will be embedding the principles of education and information of patients, co-creation with researchers, and creating access and transparency during the entire research project.
That's so important. It's really exciting that Rising Tide is doing this. TJ, would you like to add anything?
Everyone talks about putting patients at the center. Alex mentioned it, and it's a great buzzword, and it's an amazing concept. And then you look and you see clinical research, clinical trials end up being designed oftentimes for the easiest path to regulatory approval, for the best use of budget, for all of the check boxes that make sense for the industry, for the academic centers, for the sponsors and the sites that do clinical research. What we're missing are things that are things like patient-centered outcomes or patient meaningful measures and endpoints. There's numerous examples of this in the cancer world and the clinical research world, which is where I have my day job outside of being an advocate. To me, this means that there is a patient-friendly design. It means that the patient-centricity and putting patients at the center, it means involving a patient advocate, a patient advocacy group like the MRA. And it doesn't mean just involving them when you need them, but it really means involving them in the entire drug development life cycle. Like you mentioned, Kristen, that the patient input has value and is needed from the time you conceptualize what a treatment could be, up through and including the time that a company sponsor puts that out for regulatory approval, and that patient engagement is meaningful, it's impactful, and it's taken as a stakeholder alongside all of the other things that are involved in clinical research.
TJ, maybe you can speak a little bit to this, especially why you decided to work with Rising Tide on this project with them.
I've known Alex now for a couple of years, and he asked me if I would give some input, and I was more than happy to. Anytime an advocate gets a chance to impact something like what Rising Tide's doing, it's an honor. I think that there are a lot of advocates out there who want the ability to say, this is this is going to impact our population, people that are like me. And we want the chance to sit there and raise our hand and say, you're right, this may be too burdensome. This isn't the right drug. Are you gonna be able to find a population that's going to use it? Why is this better than what exists now? And I think when you have an advocacy group, a number of people who are passionate about this and are also knowledgeable, they can help steer the where these grants go and how they are going to ultimately affect the people that we're aiming to help live a longer and healthier life.
So what are some specific examples that you see where patients have successfully been involved in cancer research? Maybe who wants to take this first?
I can start, and then Alex, you can finish it up. I do, like I said, I mentioned I do this as part of, I'm an advocate as part of what I do. And I've gotten to hear other stories, not just in melanoma and not even just in cancer, but other in chronic and rare diseases. And it's amazing how some different disease states have different perspectives on it. We've seen things in the melanoma world where as immunotherapy really took off, things like a crossover arm, allowing someone to get crossed over if they didn't respond to an initial treatment, if they were on a standard of care treatment. Some companies chose to have a kind of crossover arm and allowed you, if you failed it, that we're going to cross you over and give you the medicine because we really feel like it's going to work. And that will enable us to use things like surrogate endpoints. So we might not have the perfect trial design, but we think that we can prove that there is efficacy by using something like a surrogate endpoint. Outside oncology, I know a number of patient advocate groups have worked hand in hand with either a pharmaceutical company or a research institution, so that rare diseases is really an area that happened where they created partnerships, and that partnerships allows the medicines to be targeted at the right populations. It identifies the places where there are unmet needs, and maybe certain populations, like in cystic fibrosis, is a great example where some patients have a mutation that doesn't allow them to respond to the standard of care drug, and there's nothing for them. Having that group work with and push the companies that make drugs for their population really shows, hey, we're committed to everyone, not just the people that we know that we can treat. We're committed to everyone in this population. And those are really good examples of how the industry and the academic world have partnered with patients and advocacy groups to really get a much better, well-oiled machine so that we're finding treatments for the people that need them the most.
Yeah, exactly. And Alex, any examples that come to mind?
We came during the process of looking how to engage patients in research. We came across a lot of examples, especially the ones funded by EU grants, European Union grants. And I just wanted to quickly mention a trial for non-metastatic clear renal cell carcinoma. It's called AURORAX. And it was actually co-developed with the International Kidney Cancer Coalition. And I think this trial is really where we are aiming or dreaming to achieve with the approach of engaging patients in research.
That's great. Those are great examples. I also just want to take a moment to highlight one that's in the early stages that MRA is working on, and that's what's going to be called our RARE Registry. And so it's something that we're planning to launch later this year, but it's going to be a direct-to-patient registry for melanoma patients that have the rare subtypes of acral melanoma or mucosal melanoma. And this is something where we've really been involving patients from the very beginning, because it was actually patients who approached us for the idea of the registry. And so, their voice has been critical throughout this process, as it should be. We have a patient advisory council that's been working with us to develop, what the registry will look like, what kinds of questions that we're asking to patients. And then critically, as we collect the data and we want to use those data to ask and answer, hopefully, some important questions about these cancers, these patients, we want to involve them in what kind of questions are we going to answer? How are we going to use those data? And then I think most importantly of all is that when we do get some insights from the data that we collect, that we actually provide those pieces of information back to the patients, to the registry participants themselves, because I think it's great to participate, and we really are so thankful that patients do. But I mean, something has to be in it for them as well. Obviously, we want new therapies, but I think in the shorter term, hopefully it's useful to them to just see how they're impacting things along the way. So I think from here, I just want to switch gears a little bit. It's been really interesting just to hear about examples of patient engagement and why it's so important. And I just wanted to end with providing a little bit more details about this upcoming funding opportunity between MRA and Rising Tide, which we plan to launch towards the end of August. And so, as I mentioned, we're going to be offering a couple of different team awards for first in human clinical trials where patients are fully engaged in the research process. And this is actually the third time that Rising Tide and MRA will be partnering. So I think I can say on behalf of MRA, we're really excited to do so. Alex, you want to say anything?
Yeah, from our side as well, I think especially the special component of this partnership is really that we are both looking at having patients co-design these trials with the investigators, and this is an important selection criteria. So for those who are interested in the opportunity, have a look at the funding guidelines and all the information that will be available soon online. And I think if there are any questions, you can reach out to MRA and Rising Tide, and we'll be more than happy to provide you guidance.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be including some of the specific things or examples that we're thinking about for these trials about, potentially therapies that are reducing side effects, that are repurposing other drugs, but really that also include endpoints that are impactful for patients. And to make sure that they're impactful for patients, we want applicants to include a patient engagement plan so we can really see how the patients are going to be involved throughout the entire 5 years of this award, and hopefully, moving forward even into the future after that. So everyone can look for that funding announcement at the end of August. And I think now I'll just take a moment to thank you both, TJ and Alex, for being here with me today and talking about such an important subject. Thanks again.